Hello YouTube and the Indian motorcycle community. My name is Brandon Davidson and I'm the owner of Davidson Audio, where we specialize solely in the Indian motorcycle audio solutions for you. And this video is going to be part 2 of a 4-part series where we are doing a complete 4-speaker audio install on a 2022 Indian Challenger. In the last video, which was part 1, we went ahead and installed these 6.5-inch speakers in the fairing, along with a set of 8-inch audio lids with 8-inch speakers in them. And to finish that video off, we ran all the speaker wire needed for this package to the fairing of the bike. So with the speakers and the wiring complete, now it's time to get power and ground to the fairing. So in this video, we are going to be going ahead and installing the Davidson Audio dual amp wiring kit from the battery to the fairing, providing the needed power for both amplifiers in this audio package. So let's go ahead and get this audio package going with the installation. Now at this point, we are going to remove the radiator cover. This customer has an aftermarket one. It comes off the same way though, with the battery cover, so we can gain access to the battery and install the fused power and ground with the upgraded ground as well. You will need a 6mm to remove these 4 screws, and then we will need a 10mm and a Phillips to take off the battery terminals. Now up here, we're going to take off these 2 6mm as well. All right, when you order a dual amp audio package, this is the power and ground wire that you're gonna get. All of this wire is 4-gauge oxygen-free copper. All of them have a ring terminal, crimped wire ferrule on the other end that goes to the distribution block, all shrink tubed and braided loom. The fuse block is a watertight mini A&L fuse holder with a custom bracket that we make that bolts right into the bike. And again, there's wire ferrules inside of here, shrink tube, wire loom to the fuse distribution block up in the fairing to the battery. And this is a 4-gauge upgraded ground that goes from the battery to the frame. All right, now we are on the clutch side of the bike where the radiator fan is, and this is a radiator cover. We're gonna pop this off because we need to gain access to the ground on that side, but the best way to do it, unfortunately, is from this side with a couple of extensions and a swivel. So what I like to do is, I don't have the proper tool for this right now, but I take a small pair of needle nose and just kind of separate this tab. There's only 2 of them that hold this in. And this one came out super easy. Actually, yeah, that one stayed right in there. So like I said, I just like to put these right back in here so I don't lose them. Now that we've gained access here, now we've got to worry about the ground. All right, off camera, because it's just too difficult to see, I went ahead and got the secondary ground installed. It is right there. What we did is we took the Adele clamp, took it off the wire, flipped it around, and the bolt now goes through the Adele clamp first, then the upgraded ground wire, and then it's bolted to the chassis, or actually that's the engine block. So, all right, so now that that is complete, we're gonna go ahead and put the fan shroud cover back on. It's gonna go over that clamp, slip that one in, this part, and then this is the part that actually locks it in. And there you go. All right, so to install that ground, these are the tools that I use. This is just a 1/4-inch socket, I don't know what you call it, screwdriver, 1/4-inch ratcheting wrench, and then I used 2 straight extensions. This is the smaller one, this is the longer one, and then right here I used a swivel, 1/4-inch swivel, to a 5mm Allen. So I was able to stick that all the way across, use the ratchet first to break it loose. Once I swapped everything over, I used this to get in there more of a hand tight, got it all the way hand tight, and then finished off with the ratchet. So now let's go over to the battery and get that going. All right, now that we have the aftermarket additional 4-gauge ground routed through, tools for this install is a bunch of zip ties. This isn't needed, this is just a zip tie gun that we use. A 10mm socket for the power and ground on the battery terminals, and a 5 and 6mm Allen with a flat, well, screwdriver socket and a small ratchet. The first is get this thing out of the way. That should be a 5mm. We'll get that taken out of the way, and then we will get these battery terminals taken off. This is just one bolt, and that's held in by a little, it presses in there. With these, there's a notch in the metal, and that just presses in there. So just for time being, so we don't lose it, we'll set it in there. And we will be trimming a little bit of this plastic. I've kind of already highlighted where we're going to be cutting it off, so you'll see that in a little bit. We'll get the cutter out. This one comes out of the front, and this one comes out of the top. So just be careful that you don't arc these to anything. All right, now with that out of our way, what I like to do is we're going to take this cover off for this fuse holder. So the first thing I like to do is I like to just go ahead and put the fuse holder in here. That way we can start routing the wires. So that being said, one thing I do want to let everybody know, so the 2 screws up here, they are tapped in the metal. This is a powder coated bracket. I put the zip tie on here, just added protection from keeping it from rotating, but all of these fuse holders come shipped with no fuses in them. So you will get this, and in the package you will have 2 80-amp fuses. They are white. You'll have to unscrew this, put them on there. It's a mini ANL fuse. That's just a fuse size, actual physical size. Goes on here, you screw it in, but do not put this fuse in here until all connections have been made. So this connection to the distribution blocks to both amplifiers, until you are absolutely have made all wire connections, do not put this fuse in here, because if you arc this out against the frames of the amplifiers, you can not only short out that amplifier, but it can go back through the RCAs, the remote wire, fry the DSP. Trust me, it happens. So that being said, these are shipped without a fuse. Do not put the fuse in here until all connections are made. So push it in there, that 10mm bolt, you just lift up the power wires, put it in here, finger tighten it to get the thread started. So now that that's tight, what we're going to do is I'm going to put the cover back on now. And this is where it gets a little fun because we got so much going on here. So I like to start with the power wire because we're going to put the grounds wires over it. So on this bracket here in the back, there's a notch cut out of this that gives us more room. It's hard to see, but you might be able to see my finger back here, so there's plenty of room. So what I like to start with is the power wire. And you might have to train this, but what we're going to do is you're going to push it down in here, and you're going to go around that. But actually first, let's push this wire up here. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. When you've done this a few times, you kind of get ahead of yourself at times. So, like I said, that's pushed all the way back in here. There's a lot of room back there. So, now that you got it right about where you want it over here, you set it aside, tuck it down in. And now we have the power wire installed. Make sure you push it back as far as you can. We can actually go ahead and put that bolt in there because there is no power on this wire. All right, make sure the boot is back over this, which it is. And then we're gonna end up cutting the zip tie and reworking that just a little bit. But for right now, what we wanna do next is, from the factory, this ground is gonna have a bend in it. Sometime I've noticed these are darn near perfect 90. Sometimes it's more of a 45, so it kicks it really weird. So what I like to do is take some lineman pliers. They're like the fat, blunt. They're used a lot for electrical. You put it on here, and with your hands you can bend this a little bit. Try to get this to as close of a 90 as possible so it sit like that. When we go to route the ground wire, I like to take this one. We're going to twist it so it's technically like backwards. So the front part, the bump or whatever you want to call it, the lip up, is going to feed through. So we are actually going to feed this one kind of in that same route where we put the power wire before. So once you get it to this point, what I like to do is take my screw, and I took the washer off of this because we are adding another ground wire. If you keep that washer on there, it's gonna be impossible. I will look into in the road providing a slightly longer screw. So now what I do is I feed all three of these together with the screw. That way I can push it on here and find that center. And then at this point, now we're nice and tight. We are going to send the power wire and ground wire up here on the other side of the radiators. Right in this area, there is a wiring harness that goes all the way up that we're going to follow around to the other side. And I'm not sure if you can see it, but right about here and up here, there's a casting tab that comes out. So when you route these wires, we're going to keep them really tight down here, and we're going to bring them up on the inside of that tab, both tabs towards the wiring harness. We're going to put a bunch of zip ties along that harness and then make the transition through here to the other side to follow it up. To start with is by taking the ground and pushing it up through that opening first, and find that groove that I was talking about. Now the power wire, you're gonna wanna figure out which way it's coiled up and uncoil it. So you're gonna follow how we had the power wire originally, and you're gonna come back up through here. And then the same thing where the ground wire is. And we're just gonna pull it, and we're gonna train it to fit around this fuse holder, the OEM one. And just make sure when you push this around, I've noticed that the loom will get caught on these corners, so make sure you just keep it out and around, and then push it back as far back as you can. And then just similar to that, you just want to push it back to keep it away from this screw, because I did notice that it does like to contact that, and I think we're actually going to throw a zip tie on there somehow. It's kind of a pain, but once you get it in there just like that, you just got to rotate it around till you get it back to you. And I want this zip tie all the way back there. Cut that zip tie off. Now that we have these wires pushed up, now it's a matter of working our way up this side. Now that we have that, now we got to start zip tying it up. One trick I like to do is, all right, so we find where one of the existing zip ties was, do the same trick, slight bend it. So we're actually going to start the zip ties first, so, and then we'll push the wires up through them. So just start it real loose like this. And then what I like to do is throw a couple on here. Now I will say right here, I don't know if you can see it, there is a wire connector. So we're gonna zip tie underneath that, so that way we're not holding that up anymore. So I'm gonna do 4 zip ties. So there's one zip tie factory from here, so we're below that, above it. Then there's a zip tie here, so we're gonna be below it and above it as well. Better safe than sorry, do it right once and be done with it. Our ground is towards the back, so let's route that up through our zip ties first. And don't worry about this part being perfect, because before we tighten it, we'll get the wire all pulled exactly where we want, and we'll do one zip tie at a time. Push it as tight as possible. Now make sure Where's that other one? It's right up here. So right about here. This top one, I like to leave undone till we get to the other side. And we're just gonna throw one more zip tie down right here. So what you just saw there is when I cut the zip ties, I do like to rotate the head backwards. It's just kind of a personal thing for me. So now we've pretty much got everything down by the battery good. We're gonna continue routing those power and ground wires, and we'll come back and trim up that plastic and adjust that power wire. All right, now that we have the power and ground wire here, like I said, we let the zip tie loose. We're gonna continue zip tying it. And as you can probably see, there's a factory harness that runs right here and it goes up back to the backbone. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna come up here, flatten the wires right around here, and then we're gonna follow in, throw a zip tie on the brake line and then take it through the fairing. What I like to start with though, is right here where the secondary air box would go. I like to throw a zip tie in here. Put that on, the wiring harness back on there. And this is just gonna help keep this secure, seeing that we are gonna be running a couple of wires on this now. So just like before, there is a zip tie here from the factory. So we're gonna hit that one. And then we're gonna hit probably two more on here. So we're gonna go before and after this one. And don't be afraid to put the zip tie higher up and then just move it down. Makes life a lot easier. We're gonna throw 3 of them on there. That way we've got more than enough of them. And this is where, with the bending and everything, you're gonna have to just figure out the best route. Go through all 3 of these. And as you can see, they may bundle up, which isn't a problem. Come on. And just like that. And then what I'm gonna do is go ahead and route these where I want them, because then I can just zip tie them up into place. Now, as you can see, what I was saying about now, you're gonna see the natural order of how these wanna lay. So with that being said, as tight as possible. All right, now that we have it zip tied to that harness, now we've got it going up against the neck of the bike. And one trick I like to do is you're gonna take the zip tie, you're gonna go through it like this, but then you're also gonna take a zip tie and go around it like this between the 2 wires. And it's just gonna help it keep it nice and flat against each other. So it's a little trick that I learned from some people on the car audio side of the house. Completely unnecessary, just personal preference on keeping these wires nice and tight. Right. So just tighten one a little bit and then the other. We're gonna do it 2 more times. And as you can see, we now have enough room. Just barely gonna move the wire when it's fully locked out. So now let's go to the fairing and see where the wires are coming out. All right, now that we've pushed it through, now you've got it right under here. We'll move our fairing shroud so you can see it. And you have this whole cluster of wires here. So what I like to do is you got some harnesses here. I just like to bring the power or the ground to one side and then the power to the other, because when we get the distribution on here, we're going to be bringing these wires, power wire up here and the ground wire up here. They're going to look kind of something like this. And yes, I'm going to be trimming these. So we're going to trim those up, get everything pre-fitted. So now that we have the power and ground wire ran, we're going to go ahead and get working on the speaker wires.